So here we are. Looks like we're starting with Irvin with the screen lock bypass.
So this is a funny story. Some kids were able to bypass the screensaver lock and be able to get into the I think it was Linux Mint. So they made a thing on GitHub, and there's a whole story that follows it. But essentially, it was the kids triggered a certain character that would crash the screensaver and let you in without a password.
I just type hammering away at the keyboard, right?
Yep. That's exactly what the kids were doing, and it took a while for them to find what specific keys it was. But it looks like it is fixed now.
Yeah, pressing
And it is
E tilde or something.
Yeah. That's just kind of funny that it just kids hammering away and just for the kicks and giggles, and they found a little vulnerability.
Yeah, I've seen so many of these, like on iPhones and stuff. There's some way to use the emergency call feature or something to bypass it, the lock screen.
Yeah, that's a fun little story.
Yeah. And Kaitlyn, XPC service.
Yes, so on Mac OS, you can create these things called XPC services, which are sort of like extensions to applications. But the thing is, it's run by LaunchD, which is a highly privileged part of Mac OS. And you can set it up so that your XPC service is running in the root domain, so that whenever anything runs anytime you run a process, the Mac OS will then run your XPC service as root.
Do you need root privileges to create a new XPC or what?
Oh, you can create an XPC using Xcode. I'm not entirely sure you need it to get to root. Apparently, it is a escalation privilege, so apparently you do not need root to get it to work. But yeah, you can use these XPC functions to essentially get root on macOS, which is
there are sometimes local privilege escalations.
Yeah. Fun times for all. There's apparently already an Apple patch. Yeah. So yeah, it's a fixed vulnerability. Just make sure the only owner of a process domain could modify it.
Yeah. I know that's a good thing. I think on Try Hack Me or Hack This Box, where they make you get a shell and then get a shell as root. So you practice escalating, because it really is like important to get good at it. Yeah. And it is shockingly easy to escalate privileges.
It can be. There are times when it's kind of difficult. I mean, if I didn't know about XPC, for example, and I was just on a Mac, I wouldn't, I'd just be looking at different processes and figuring out what's running as root and what can I, modify and stuff. It could take a while to get up there. So.
Oh, that's good. Yep. All right, and we got, whoops, I wanted to be here. I can put it here. All right, processor families.
Yes, so at CES on Friday, Intel announced 4 new processor families and 50 new products. This is the kind of announcement that Intel makes every year or so. So it's nothing earth-shattering here. It's not even necessarily security relevant. But there are some interesting developments. Among them, Intel is touting its new SuperFin FinFET technology for the transistor gates. Which will help them extend the functional life of the 10 nanometer process. Intel's been falling behind in their manufacturing capabilities. Other foundries have managed to shrink their processes all the way down to 5 nanometers. Intel is still stuck at 10. This has caused a lot of turmoil for them. Their CEO just announced that he would be resigning shortly. So I think his ouster, he was pretty much ousted, probably in part a result of Intel's manufacturing problems. Nevertheless, there are some interesting new features that are coming. One of them is with their vPro line of products, there will be something called Hardware Shield. This was announced previously in the 10th generation, but Hardware Shield is interesting from a security standpoint because it apparently integrates the GPU so that during idle cycles, the GPU can be used for anti-ransomware detection capabilities. if it's integrated by third-party independent software vendors. So
Does
this
that work?
idle time GPU can be applied for identifying anomalous behavior, AI, etc. So it'll be interesting to see how that gets applied in the future by third-party vendors. So far, only Cybereason has signed on to this program.
Intel seems to be going down and losing compared to AMD these days.
Yeah, and
And
part of it is because of their problems with manufacturing.
Yeah.
There's been apparently there's an activist investor now who's calling for them to divest all of their manufacturing capabilities and to become essentially a fabless company, much like AMD is already. And as I was saying, other companies like TSMC have already gotten down to 5 nanometers processes, whereas Intel's still stuck at 10 and just can't seem to figure it out.
So what, they have to become a fab company, you say?
Well, they already are a fab company.
Yeah.
But what some of these activist investors are calling for is that they become a fabless company and divest all the
buy stuff that's made by somebody else and repackage.
Right.
But I wonder, also everybody's moving to ARM processors, right? Mac is, and I've heard servers are gonna.
Yeah, and the Mac M1 is a 5 nanometer process, and so from a manufacturing standpoint, it's more sophisticated, and by all accounts, the capabilities of that chip are quite impressive too. So, yeah, it seems like even a smaller company like Apple that has a smaller team in their silicon design is already outperforming Intel.
Yeah. So it seems like so many businesses, the old standard is not keeping up, and the new upstarts are gonna eat their lunch unless they shape up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Apple only has a smaller developer size because it's been outsourced essentially. Because when you work on an ARM processor, most of the work has already been done for you, whereas Intel's designing the entire platform and everything.
Yeah. Anyway, well, I guess we'll see. The Intel has the advantage, of course, of all the legacy Intel code, but that won't last forever.
Or a hindrance, as the case may be.
Well, yeah, there's that. Anyway, I've been for quite a while, I've been very concerned about the politics and the coup and stuff. And this is, I think, the thing that got my attention. The Republicans now have a new system, which I think is because they basically become a religion and not a political party. And now they control all the news too. So now the truth doesn't matter at all. So Trump stood there and sent his supporters to perform the coup. And after they decided the coup was unpopular, he said, oh, no, that was Antifa. That wasn't Trump supporters. And his supporters believe this. So this is why I think, it's a new world where the truth doesn't matter at all. And they can say any lie. And all the Republican legislators, 95% of them will just go along with it. And all the news channels will go along with it. And all the Republican voters will go along with it. So he can just say black is white. And by tomorrow, they all just believe black is white. This is... So it means, I think it changes our politics to basically a state of civil war, where the Republicans are just lying right in your face. And if they say they're saving the country or something, they're just changing their lie every day. It doesn't matter at all. And so Democrats who argue against them have to abandon all hope of actually having an argument and proving a point. They just have to say, look, we have 51%, so we outvote you and crush you. And we don't even make the slightest attempt to communicate with you or anything, since you're just lying. And everything, and making up complete nonsense, and they totally know they're doing it. So anyway, it's. I think I had high hopes for Biden because I thought he could actually compromise with the Republicans, but now I think it's very clear that is impossible, and that it's just going to be open war in Congress. So now is the question of whether Biden is going to wake up, because Obama tried to compromise with Republicans, and it took him years to figure out that they were just playing games with him. And the question is, how long will it take Biden to figure that out? Anyway, but this is an amazing time. And there are a few Republicans, 5% of them so far, that say, wait, what is this? You're just lying. This is not true. Why are we following this guy into a world where everything is not true? And the answer is because it works. And if all you care about is success, This is perfectly fine. Become a religion, lie to people, tell them there is no coronavirus. Oh, those were Antifa people. Just abandon your own vice president, abandon your own supporters that went to war for you yesterday because they're inconvenient now. And everybody, as long as we stick together, this will work. And it does work. So I think it's a new kind of realpolitik. Anyway, that's what I thought was very interesting. And then you got the vaccine documents.
Yeah, sort of along the similar lines here. There was some of the hacking going on with relation to the vaccines had to do with getting a hold of documents relating to them and then manipulating them and releasing those documents in order to inspire lack of confidence in the vaccine. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Some of the other articles that I had read about this kind of hinted at nation state actors doing this. So I think that I thought this was pretty interesting. And I was curious too about what the motivation behind doing that might have been.
Did they have an answer here about that?
I didn't find much on that. Only hints that it was a nation state actors who did it.
Well, about 2 weeks ago in the before time, I would have also been puzzled about the motivation because I would still be stuck on this thing called truth. But now I'm beginning to see how it works. The point is all Republicans refuse to wear masks. That is their badge of honor. They go to parties and stuff. That's how you show you're on the team. And having a small number of them die is a small price to pay for having a clearly defined team. We're the good guys and it separates us from the other guys. So there is money to be made and power to be gained by anti-vaxxing. It creates a cult and it makes a cult stronger. And cults require a sacrifice to be in the membership, usually doing something which everyone else will say is stupid. That helps isolate you from the other people. So we're the good guys and those are all the unbelieving outsiders. I'm beginning to see this is just like it's basically religion. It makes sense for them to choose something outrageous that is visible, like not wearing a mask. Then you can easily spot who's on your team.
I could see that. Now this was essentially targeted at Europeans. However, I mean, with everyone knowing the nature of the internet, we know it doesn't just affect Europeans. But also there are similar factions emerging in Europe too, to the MAGA contingent here. So
I think the same logic applies over there. And this is, I'm thinking about the Crusades. They said we have to go fight for the home of Christ our Lord. So a semi-mythical figure from thousands of years ago is the reason you all have to leave home and go kill a bunch of people. It just totally works to found a religion on complete nonsense and get your team to go do something. The truth is really not very important in politics at all. All that matters is rallying your troops around one flag.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then we've got Google cutting off Chromium-based browsers. Now, yeah, well, I'd like to hear what you think about this one, Irvin.
So this one, Google Sync is going to stop working on Chrome-based browsers. So people like Brave and Opera and all of them who use that service to sync your data will get cut off by Google in March.
Do you use that sync feature?
I don't use that sync feature in anything.
That appeared, I quit using Chrome. I said, these people are scum. I'm not going to have anything to do with them because of that sync feature.
Yeah, no, I use Brave, but I don't use the sync function at all for either that or Firefox.
Yeah, but they found out, of course, that people are abusing the sync to steal your data, which is obviously what's going to happen.
Yeah, they're just using that service.
Everyone's password.
Yeah, I mean, someone else already built this, so they're like, whatever.
I know people that do use it because they find it to be the most convenient way to keep all their stuff organized.
Right, and that's where it works beautifully. But Google says that they don't want that anymore. They don't want other people. They want it just to stay in Chrome. They don't want Chromium based.
Well, that does make some sense. I mean, at least you'd have to make sure that they're not malicious, the people you're just handing the data to.
Or you will, yeah. Yeah.
Of
So
course, then the question is, how well can they do that? Can they really can you make a clone of Google Chrome that would fool them?
maybe.
Yeah.
I think this move is a bad one because it's going to cause people to create some underground stuff, and then it's really going to get shady. Because it is useful. I don't use it, but I definitely see the usefulness of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So then there's going to be like third-party extensions that are going to be just harvesting everyone's.
Yeah, that's really going to be bad.
I guess. I mean, you could just get a password manager anyway.
True.
Well, anyway, and then we got Xbox Instant On. Oh, this thing, power consumption. Yeah.
Right. So the new Xbox has this instant on feature where you can either set it to power saving mode or instant on. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking instant on works by, queuing up the startup and then going into hibernation mode or something. No, it doesn't. Instant on mode, I kid you not, draws 10 watts of power 24/7.
Mhm.
So if you want to have your Xbox turn on right away, you got to draw 10 watts of power all the time. And and with all the Xboxes out there, that's taking up a significant portion of our electric grids. And that's a problem.
Well, I suppose, but I mean, if you compare this to like Bitcoin mining or something.
I would argue, I mean, the thing about Bitcoin mining is it's just a few spots of high intensity power usage. This is 10 watts spread across basically, like 25% of all households. And that's a lot. I mean, I don't know how it compares to Bitcoin, but it's a lot.
I think, yeah, of course.
There's somewhere in here where 4 billion kilowatt hours.
Yeah. Yep. Well, anyway.
I mean, that's not trivial. That's a lot of power to make sure your Xbox turns on right away. That is, manufacturers just need to really think about the power usage of their products and how that affects, the grid as a whole. Like, you can't just say, this is, you can't, if something's supposed to be off, it's to draw less than 1 or 2 watts of power at most. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, this is why they moved to the energy efficient light bulbs and stuff, the same kind of consideration. Anyway.
And we should be switching to energy efficient video game consoles.
Yep, that's probably true. I mean, I think I would like to see a non-mandatory solution, like they should label this Energy Star or something on your gadgets, and then you can choose to buy those. But anyway, it's good to know. We'll see what comes of it. And then Alan's got Joker Stash. Oh, yeah. These guys have been around forever.
Yes, Joker Stash, one of the world's largest carding forums, is shutting down as of February 15. This is sad news for carders and people who buy cards around the world. It's also bad news for one of my assignments in the DNS security class, which involves Joker Stash domains, related domains.
Oh.
But anyway, Joker Stash, it's been around for several years now. It's had quite a successful run. It was one of the premier carding sites on the internet, and it was never on Tor. It was never used an onion domain. It was always on the open internet, and it had estimated sales of hundreds of millions of dollars over its run. So presumably somebody made a fair amount of money through Joker Stash. But more recently, they've been having problems. Apparently, the quality of the card information has gone down significantly in the past several months. And they also had some legal problems. Some of their domains got taken down by the FBI. But they managed to get those back up and running. But apparently, they're feeling some heat. And the owners and admin of the site said that he recently had COVID, and so it was time for him to step away.
At some point, he's going to have to hide. I mean, I assume eventually they'll track down the administrator and prosecute him.
You'd think so, yes, but they made it this far without getting caught, so they've had a very successful run.
Well, if he's Russian, he can probably get away with it forever as long as he doesn't leave the country. But anyway, guess we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I feel a little sad.
oh yeah, you're missing out on something. What were you doing with it in your GNS class?
Oh, it was a who is exercise.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Anyway, so this one I thought was wonderful. There's 3 in a row here, but this is a description of how homomorphic encryption works from a high level matter. Homomorphic encryption, I'm hearing more and more about it. And I got some of it working in my crypto class last semester. But this explains it in a nice way. So the idea is, suppose you want to have people vote on something. Like we want to decide whether we want to go out to like pizza or hamburgers is like one of the classic one. What you do with homomorphic encryption is you encrypt stuff and you can do math on the ciphertext without decrypting it. So what you can do is you can have people vote on either yes or no and encrypt their answer. And so their identity is encrypted. Then you can do math on the output, and then you can look at the output and have a limited decryption where you find out what the answer was without finding out how people voted. And that's the point of it. You can store data like PII in the cloud, like you can have your Facebook profile with your name and address and phone number and all kinds of things. And then you can authorize somebody to know only one fact about you, like the fact that you're over 21, and therefore you should be allowed to use this adult thing. And they'd only be able to see that one fact. They would not be able to see all the other facts stored in your profile. So that's why it's highly desirable, and people are very interested in it for personally identifiable information and health information and so on. The one part I thought was pretty hilarious. I heard a podcast of a marketing company trying to sell this stuff, and he said, "Oh, we can't really do it at line speed." And I'd say, yeah, that's an understatement. When I downloaded the stuff and gave students the homework, it runs 1,000 times slower than other forms of encryption. So if you give it a database with 35 capital cities and it has to find one, it takes 5 minutes to look through a list containing 35 items to find the answer. So that's the problem. This is miraculous, but the performance penalty is monstrous. So I highly question its practical utility right now, but the market appeal is big. People are motivated to get this stuff working. And I've heard some people say there are some versions of it that speed that up to being only 50 times slower. And at that point, it might be practical. Anyway, this is good if you want to get a nice overview of how homomorphic encryption works. And it appears to be really coming because it lets you have miraculous privacy. Anyway. And then we got leaking trucker records.
Yeah, this is actually pretty interesting. This article is even more interesting once you start digging into it. At least I thought it was. So this ransomware gang, which as far as I could tell from my research, they go by the handle of Ultra Rank. Though I wasn't able to find out too much about them since I don't have the setup that I used to visit questionable websites here with me right now. I wasn't able to really go down that rabbit hole safely, but I did find out a little bit about it, and it was just pretty interesting because they hit this medical diagnostics company that does, they process drug test info for truckers and train engineers and stuff like that. And they also they've been hitting a bunch of other, the same gang has been hitting a bunch of other transit related, rail and transit related companies recently. But what I thought was really interesting about this company that they hit, this tailor-made diagnostics, is that they also serve the Secret Service, Navy SEALs, stuff like that. So, again, we got to really look at these third-party companies that we're using when we implement stuff like this. And, we've got HIPAA, but that doesn't really have a lot of or any mandates for cybersecurity protections. And companies like this, they can say, oh, well, we're sorry, we didn't know, our bad, it won't happen again. But now they have all these people's social security numbers, medical records, really sensitive PII. So I think about that when Especially now we're doing a lot more telehealth with our own healthcare providers here in California. And it's just like, geez, are these guys really managing this stuff well? Because some of the stuff's pretty questionable. So.
Well, I think that's the whole I Am the Cavalry project. Medical stuff is the worst. They are totally not protecting your stuff because they're thinking about other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And we're down to, getting around smartphone encryption. This I like people to know about this.
So there's a link there to the actual page with the site of the research. I found this very interesting. So they put iOS versus Android to see the security, and they came up with, they're not perfect, but it looks like Apple is winning. Apple's critical problems, were limited benefit of encryption for powered on devices, because once you unlock it, then all the keys go up in memory, and they're not necessarily in a locked state. There's weakness of cloud backup and services. There is evidence of past hardware compromise, like using gray key. And there's limitations to the end-to-end encryption of cloud services for Apple. Android has a few more. So it does have the limited benefit of encryption for powered on devices. Like, it doesn't have that Apple complete protection over the entirety of the data. There's deprioritization for end-to-end encrypted backup for all things Android. It has a large surface attack since all Androids aren't equal. Some are still pretty old and behind. There's limited use of end-to-end encryption and availability of data in services.
Yeah, and I think we all know in practice, the cops can just buy a third-party tool like Graycool or what's Graykey or the Israeli one, Celebrite, and they can totally get in your phone for all practical purposes.
Just comparing the two, without that in mind, it does look like iOS has the least of the two major problems. But it's a very interesting read.
Just in case anybody actually thinks your stuff is really hidden on your phone, it's not really all that hidden.
Right.
It's only hidden to stop low-level hackers. And the NASA rocket failed. I heard about this.
Why do you say it failed? I mean,
it says fail right there.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the thing is, you had like Elon Musk, had his, SpaceX had their test. It completely crashed and blew up, and it was a success. This one safely recognized that there was an error and then shut down safely, and no one got hurt. There was no explosion. They'll be able to get it back up and running again, soon. But this one's a failure. I don't get it.
What I'm saying. There's these technical people that believe in this thing called the truth. And then there's these other people like religious leaders and marketing people that understand how little the truth matters. And we need to get on board with understanding that.
Yes. So no, in all seriousness, this is exactly what tests are for, right? They're supposed to diagnose problems before it goes up. And so the test went exactly as it should. We found a problem, and it'll get fixed. NASA unfortunately does not have the huge marketing budget to go on and tell people that this was a huge success.
They need to hire a Republican.
Yes, they need to hire. I'm not going to say Republican, but they need to hire someone who knows how to spin things. But yeah. So they had this successful rocket test up until about 60 seconds in. It was supposed to be 8 minutes. But they detected a MCF, a major component failure on engine 4. We still don't know what that failure was, but I'm sure we'll find out in the coming weeks and days. So they just shut it down safely, and they'll, everything's still there, so they'll replace whatever. And it's also important to note that this is not a quote unquote entirely new rocket. This is part of the SLS, which is going to be one of the most powerful rockets ever made, rivaling the Saturn V. But they're reusing components that were developed like 30 or 40 years ago, right, in order to quote unquote save money. Now I'm thinking maybe that wasn't the best decision, in retrospect, but I understand why they make it. They want to save as much money as possible and reuse and everything. But they are trying to integrate very old technology with, new components and stuff. And so, stuff's going to happen.
Well, I think in the future, NASA's not going to make rockets. It's just going to be the private sector. They'll just.
I mean, the problem is that the private sector is not developing any rockets that are powerful enough to take payloads to the moon and to Mars. And that's where the SLS comes in.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, but I think the private sector is really making big steps forward.
They are.
Yeah.
Didn't they upgrade the computers for the SLS rockets to like Mac from 20 years ago or something?
Yeah. Now they're running 6800 CPUs, which is Motorola 6800s. So that's a big step up.
This reminds me of when I did Cisco, and the Cisco router says, okay, plug in a USB stick with maximum size 32 megabytes. And I'm like, what? And then they say, oh yeah, you can put it in the NVRAM, but you have a total storage of 16 kilobytes. And I'm like, it's like, I don't even know where they get these components except by digging in a junkyard.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, keep in mind that hardware that goes into space has to be like hardened and specially made. And so you're not going to find the latest Intel chip on, anything that goes into space. I mean, and the 6800 is plenty powerful. It was one of the, it was the processor that ran the first Macs. It was the processor of the Amiga. The Commodore Amiga. Come on, that is one of the best computers ever made. So
it was 25 years ago. Yeah.
25 years ago, Sam, I think you're thinking more like 35 years ago. I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah. I had one.
Yeah.
But well, all right. I still feel like something's wrong. Anyway, all right. And then we've got Doe.
Yes, so the NSA has issued a warning to enterprises, mostly encouraging them to avoid using Doe, the DNS over HTTPS, which is the new, much more secure, much more private way of sending DNS queries and responses. And there's no new technical information in this statement issued by the NSA. But it's interesting that the NSA is making such a big public statement about this and being so explicit in telling enterprises that they should be avoiding the use of Doe on their internal networks.
Well, external, yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I think everyone got so upset about Doe about a year ago. They said we're going to lose all of our security tracking because we can't do DNS queries. And so the cure is you can use Doe if you want, but you force them to go to your official enterprise resolver.
Right. If you must use it, force it to go to your internal resolver.
Which, that's reasonable. And people already have to do that anyway. They have to man in the middle everything at the proxy.
Yes.
But anyway, it's good to have official government recommendations. This really makes it much easier to implement at corporations. I remember when I used to do a lot of vulnerability reports, it's really hard to convince anybody of anything if you can't point to an official government document explaining why you shouldn't do this. Anyway. All right. And so this one's more of the same kind of thing has been on my mind. So they have a QAnon meme queen explaining her life here. She said her friends have all abandoned her. People won't even talk to her anymore. She's totally in QAnon. And it's really a religion. The reporters that interview these people say they're very relaxed. They're very happy. They have purpose in their life. They have a community now. The fact that it's all lies does not matter any more than it has ever mattered. You feel like you're doing something. You feel a sense of purpose bigger than yourself. And so she said, I didn't go personally to invade the Capitol or anything because my only participation is online, but she spends her time making QAnon memes to spread what she sees as the truth. And this is a very interesting analysis from a few months ago from a game designer. And he says, this stuff is like role-playing games and like live action games and alternate reality games. but it's twisted to where instead of like decorating reality with these like Pokemon figures or something, where you add something to reality to play a game and you know you're in a game, they take your mind and twist it so that you, this thing called apophenia, you perceive reality in the context of the game. And they say it's the opposite of how games normally work, where the rules are for the game. You say, wait a minute, the whole world is conspiring against you. And so when you see like Trump make a confusing statement, you'll find clues that convince you to go deeper and deeper. And he talks about how, and I know this is very much like the mystic religious stuff, which I used to do long ago. Once you believe that you're getting messages from God, then you find random things giving you clues, and you look for things like this guy on the TV show who never says anything straight out. He just says some confusing cryptic thing, which could mean anything. And that's what all the Q dumps are like. Do the research. And so now you find all this proof that it's out there. And the proof consists of stuff like celebrities that make funny hand gestures. These are all secret hand gestures communicating a secret membership in like a club to you, and that they're all part of the secret pedophile cabal because they made that hand gesture instead of another one. And every jewelry they wear is a secret occult meme. And here's more and more of these dangerous devil's horns from all these celebrities. And then you've got politicians that do it for God knows why. But then, of course, you've got rock bands and stuff that do it very deliberately to like stir up their supporters. And so it shows, you know, how it works. You get someone to go deeper and deeper into this, and it helps to understand for people who have never been in a cult group or a mystic. You can understand the path here where you sink into this, where you're convinced the world is full of a secret all around you. You're the only one that can see the truth. And I think we all need to go there now that they are a terrorist group living in America, destroying our country. It's no longer just a small number of nuts you can laugh at. We all need to gain some analysis of how this works. And, you know, to get people out of it is really not easy at all, because once you're in it deep enough, there's no evidence that will ever convince you it's not true. Anyway, it's going to be something we're all going to have to figure out. And then you got this guy living in the airport for 3 months.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty entertaining story. This guy was living in O'Hare in Chicago for 3 months. And they found him. A couple of airline employees finally asked him for a badge or asked him for identification, and he showed the badge of an actual airport employee who had reported it missing in October. And apparently he ended up there in LA in October, and he's just been living there ever since. And I thought that was pretty amazing. I mean, it sort of reminds me of how we often discover, you know, that intruders have been in the network for months on end and nobody noticed anything. You know, supposedly our airports have ultra tight security and they know everyone who's in there and where they are at all times. Not so much. And O'Hare is one of the busiest airports in the country, which just, I don't know. I just thought it was very interesting and kind of funny.
Oh, yeah, I think it shows you the essence of social engineering. You can ask for a member of the group. I remember I went to a convention in Los Angeles, and there was like an anime convention nearby. And this friend of mine said, let's go to the anime convention. I said, oh, you need a badge. He said, no, you don't. Just walk right in. We walk right in. We're wearing like a DEF CON looking badge. They just let you right in. He said, see? I said, well, I didn't know it was that easy, but it's totally that easy.
Yeah. And I have so many questions. Like, did he ever leave the airport? Was it, or has he been there since October? I'm interested on the rest of his defense. Apparently he still lives here in California with roommates. So I don't know. I'm just very curious, and I hope we get updates on this case because it is so weird.
You know, I think prior to 9/11, a lot more people used to live in airports. And I say that because before 9/11, I spent a night at Boston Airport, Logan Airport, because I couldn't manage to get a hotel room.
Mhm.
And so I was able to get through security just by saying, oh, yeah, I'm on such and such flight, not presenting a ticket. And I slept in one of the big halls.
Yep.
but along with some other people, I noticed.
Oh yeah.
And they weren't going on any flights either. And the first train out of Logan Airport to downtown Boston, there were like at least a dozen other people who seemed to have spent the night there at the airport, just like me, and didn't really have any travel plans in mind. I think they were probably unhoused. And so I wonder if this used to be far more common than it is nowadays, post 9/11.
I wonder too. I mean, it's a solid plan for a warm place to sleep where people aren't gonna bother you, and it's
Right.
relatively safe.
Yeah, it was really bad waking up with the first flights arriving, around 4 a.m. But other than that, it was very warm. It was perfectly safe,
Mhm.
very secure area. Yeah, nobody's going to mess with your stuff. So
Yeah. And of
airports
course,
used to be a good
there used
place.
to be people that have to do it because they have a flight early in the morning.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's not
I've
suspicious
had to
that
do
there's
it.
people sleeping around.
Yeah.
I noticed this funny blue dot on my screen, and now it's like drawing a pirate ship on my screen, and I think I figured out what's going on. We have a subversive member among us. Anyway, so
Oh, probably.
I wonder who that subversive member could be.
that's right.
Who knows?
Well, now at least I know I don't have some kind of weird stuff I spilled on my screen. I actually tried wiping it off a while ago. Anyway. All right. Any more remarks? I'm going to stop the recording.